Hello, everyone. This is Ron and Marcus here today for the special Labor Day 2020 holiday edition here. It's not a live show today. It's a pre-recorded show, but we wanted to put something in the stream for tonight because a lot of people, even though it's a holiday and they're busy in the holiday by like 9 p.m., at least on the East Coast, things winding down for a lot of people. And, so we want to have something in the feed for you. So we thought, I think we talked about this on a previous episode. We wouldn't do a show where we talked about, what were the best affordable drones in each of the different price categories or price buckets. And, we've come up with a list here of some drones that we think qualify. And one of the biggest qualifiers here is camera drone. And by camera drone, we mean stabilized camera drones. So it will be exceptions, but mostly we're going to talk about drones that have some kind of stabilization to them, either the 2 or 3 axis gimbal or ESI, electronic image stabilization. Because I know a lot of you out there are going to say, oh, I have this drone and it flies great and it's got range and whatever, but the camera, has the type of video where nobody really wants to look at the video except for you. So we're going to try not to talk about too many of those drones today, even though we know that there's a lot of them out there, good flying drones. They just don't have any stabilization. So I want to welcome Marcus, to the show here tonight. And I want him, maybe before we get going, maybe he could just kind of go down a list of some of the drones we're going to talk about, and then we'll, dial in on each category and go from there. Marcus, do you have that list handy?
I do, Ron. Thank you so much. And yeah, so this is kind of interesting. So I guess it would be important to talk about how we broke them out. We've got the sub $200 category, which, that's a little bit iffy in getting, I think, the quality that you're looking for. But if somebody really just doesn't want to spend more than that, we put some picks in there. And it's worth stating that there is a ton of drones in that category. And like Ron said, there's some of them that may fly great and they're not on our list. We picked ones that we have a certain amount of experience with. So you may have another one that fits just as well as whatever we talk about here, but we kind of limited it to that. And I want to add one thing to what Ron was saying. One of the qualifications that I would put in there, and there are exceptions to all these qualifications we're talking about, but I also would like to state that they're mostly GPS drones too. So there will be some exceptions, but for the most part, GPS drones. And then we went into the $300 category, and that's where things start getting interested. And quite frankly, I kind of think that's the place to start. And then we came up with a sub $500 category, and you guys probably already know the major players in there, like the Mini, the Xeno Pro, the Xeno2, the Femi Xs X8 Se, all those. And then we broke out a special category, sub $700, and the Paradenofi fits into that. And the Paradenofi is significant enough. We felt like it really has to fit in there in its own in that sub 700 because it's a great drone. And then the sub $1,000 category, and we did not go over $1,000. I do have one exception in there that's just barely over $1,000. But you can guess what those are: the Mavic Air 2, Autel Evo 1, Skydio 2, etc. And then we each have our own choices of what we would pick in these groups. So yeah, Ron, where should we start?
Well, I think about a couple qualifiers here. When we talk about prices, when we give you the DJI prices, that's like the prices over at the DJI store. The other drones we're going to talk about, some of the non-DJI drones, those prices could change by the day. They're like the stock market. We could quote you a Hubsan or a Femi price, something like that. And that may be the price today, but by tomorrow, that price could radically change. So we're kind of basing our prices on the non-DJI drones on the average selling price, because those average selling prices are going to swing quite a bit, on the daily, especially the weekly.
It's very volatile. And I did the research on this yesterday and came up with these prices, but that doesn't mean what they'll be tomorrow.
Yeah, so like I said, very much like the stock market.
Yeah.
And we try to only include drones, at least in this first part, that are for sale new today. So I know we're going to leave a couple drones off that people like a lot, but you really can't find them new anymore. They're really only available as used or refurbs. So we probably won't focus a lot of time on them. And maybe if we do, it'll be at the end of the show, since, again, we don't want to go on and on about a drone that a lot of people are unable to buy.
We should also add that there's some drones that neither you or I have any experience with, like some of the unique products and stuff that maybe would fit in here someplace, but neither Ron or I know enough about them to really speak to them. So, we just want you to know that we're not leaving anything out on purpose. It's just we felt like it's drones that we feel we can speak to and have some experience with.
But if you, in the comments, if you have a favorite drone that fits the qualifiers here, like under 1,000, good stabilized video, leave it in the comments and let us know why it's your favorite drone, or why it should be, considered on this list. So, okay, with no further ado, I want to bring up a category Marcus did not even mention: the sub $100 camera drone with stabilized video. This is the DJI/Rise Teledrone. This drone is courtesy of Marcus. He sent to me a while back for review, but it fortunately got here right when the weather turned too hot to take it out, because it's more of a backyard flyer. So it's not something like I take down by the water or the beach, because I may never see it again. But it's unique in its category. I believe it sells for like almost right around $100 now, and it actually has ESI, electronic image stabilization. And unlike some other affordable drones that have this feature, this is built into the drone. It doesn't rely on your smartphone to do it for you, which of course would hinder the performance of your phone with the flight controls, because it's trying to do double duty. So this, I believe this takes 720p at its best. And I don't know the frame rate on this, but I imagine if it was no more than 30. And has a small battery. It has about 10-minute flight time, Marcus? Yeah,
roughly about 10 minutes. And Ron, you brought something up. I can't remember the camera specs either, and I'm going to look them up real quick here. So,
Marcus, still not going to say this is not a GPS drone, but it has a optical flow sensor in the bottom. And it's not like some of the ones on some of the cheaper drones, it doesn't hold it. This thing actually works very well for what looks like a pinhole, thing. It holds it in place very well. Now, don't get me wrong. If you have a good breeze blowing, it's going to eventually drift away on you. But in a light breeze, it'll hold steady. Marcus has the camera info now.
I've got some specs for you, Ron. So you're correct. It is 720p. They're saying a 13-minute flight time, a 100-meter range. So,
right, which 100 meters is good for something this small, but don't take it 100 meters in the wind.
Yeah, totally agree. Although this is interesting.
This is still for sale new, even though I think it'll be 3 years old come this CES, which I think it was announced that 3 years ago this year. Well, it won't be a real CES this year. But there's rumors, not only rumors. There's a thing called a talent out, which has some kind of big light up, and supposedly it's already for sale in the Asian countries. So it's going to be some kind of a slight update. We don't have all the information on it, but we will. Get that information to you when we learn more about the Talent, which again is not officially on sale in the U.S. At any place yet. So
Ron, 5-megapixel stills with that too,
and of course the pictures are even better than the video with this, because they don't need as much stabilization. So the ESI in here does more than enough to stabilize your pictures for you in light to moderate wind. So this is my only recommendation for a camera drone in the sub $100 category, Would you concur with that, Marcus?
Absolutely. There is. I hear Brian Singleton talks to us about. There is a Parrot, kind of a similar. I can't remember the name.
Yeah. The Parrot, but it doesn't have stabilized video. I know
it doesn't.
It may actually fly better than this. I think it actually may be a better performer than this in every way but the camera.
Got you.
I mean, the camera is not even close, so it's
got you. Yeah. The camera on that thing is remarkable. I mean, it's amazing how stable it is. Yeah.
Right. This it's going to be better than some of the many of the drones in that $100 to $200 bucket we're about to move on to. So that's basically all I have to say on this, unless you have want to close this out.
Perfect.
Wisdom on the tele.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that one up, Ron.
When I give you this price point $9,999, that's just the drone. You don't get a control. You can get a Bluetooth controller with it, but it's an aftermarket product, and it does not come at that price point of you have to fly with your phone. But with the optical flow, it actually flies pretty decent just with the phone. Again, in your backyard or in a controlled environment, and not over the Snake River. not over the Atlantic Ocean, in your backyard or your local park.
Yeah, totally agree.
All right, Marcus, you want to handle the next drone on the list here?
Well, so in the sub $200 category, one of the ones I put on the list here is the MJX Bug 7. And that one is a little bit of an outlier again because it does not have a stabilized camera in any way. It doesn't have a gimbal, does not have EIS. However, in my experience with it, the camera is, in fact, more stable than, say, for instance, I had the Potensic Dreamer for a while. Similar, I mean, in fact, it was a $300 drone, and it had an unstabilized camera on it that looked horrible. It would tilt all around, and the camera quality was terrible. You couldn't, in fact, it was to the point that it was unusable. And that's what I've found with a lot of the sub $200 drones that aren't stabilized. The juice isn't worth the squeeze because the camera is so bad. I'm not saying this is great. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying, but I'm saying that it's enough that you can see what you're doing. It's relatively stable. Of course, because it's not stabilized, it'll turn when you turn the drone, tilt, etc. And you can see it's got a little bit of that fisheye effect in it, but it's a decent camera, and it will give you at least an idea of what you can do with a camera drone. Now, the upside. Why do I have this on the list? Because the upside is, like a lot of those drones you were talking about, Ron, it's a good flyer. And like you said, there's a number of drones that you could put in this category. Oh, it flies real good. Not only does this one fly good, it's a very straightforward, user-friendly interface. What I found with a lot of these drones in this category, they are way harder to fly than a more expensive drone because the user interface is so clunky, does not work very well. You get instructions that are not very good, and so you kind of have to stumble through trial and error to figure things out. The Bug 7 comes with a nice big instruction book, easy to read, very thorough, and the app, in my experience, worked very well. The drone was very easy to fly, very stable. It is a GPS drone. It does have optical flow on it, so it's stable. It believe it or not, it has an LED light on the bottom of it, so that in low light you can turn that LED light on to help that optical flow sensor. So if you were flying it in the evening, you could do that. I'm not sure why you would want to do that. Range-wise, they claim a 300-meter range. The reality is it's about half that because it's a Wi-Fi drone and it uses your phone's Wi-Fi. Anytime I never got beyond about 180 meters that I wouldn't lose signal. But the other positive thing I'll say about it is when it lost signal, it would do what it was supposed to do, would go into return to home, come back, last comment I'm going to make, it has a couple different intelligent flight modes. It has a follow me function, a GPS related follow me that worked very well. And it has an orbit function that was very simple, worked very well. Now, it also has a waypoint function that I could not get it to work. I've seen other drone reviews that did get it to work, so it could be that I was just doing something wrong. I don't know.
It only works on Android, the waypoints.
Possible.
Hey, one question. What's the battery life look like that on that Bug 7?
Gosh, you're putting me on the spot. I'm trying to remember. It did pretty darn good.
Ballpark, not what it states it could do, what you got out of it yourself.
Yeah, I'm going to say more than 10 minutes, less than 15, Ron.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't owned a Bugs. I haven't bought a Bugs product since, the Bugs 2 or whatever, which was a GPS camera drone, which fit in his price bucket too. And drone was a great little flyer in his day, reliable. Everything was good except the camera was,
What I'm saying is a beginner, somebody that had never flown a drone before,
right,
could pick this thing up and they could get it in the air and be successful with it. And you can't say that about some of the other drones.
Right. So I currently don't own any drone that fits this category. So I don't have a recommendation or anything. But you have more than one recommendation category, don't you, Mark?
Yeah, Ron. So we both. I have a Bugs B20 on the way, but I don't have it. But both Ron and I have looked at some reviews on the B20, so we have an idea of what it'll do. Ron, do you want to take that one? Or I can do it if you want.
The B20 is the latest Bugs drone. It just started popping up on. I first saw it on TomTop, and now I think it's on Banggood too. And it's slotted somewhere. I've seen it being sold anywhere from around $150 to $175. What it brings to the table over the Bug 7 is it has ESI, electronic image stabilization, and we've seen a couple of reviews, most notably Quadcopter 101 had like almost an hour-long review of it, and the electronic image stabilization seems to work pretty well, with the caveat that it's just to fly very slow in the stabilization mode. If you put it into like the sport mode or whatever, that won't be stabilized. But I'm looking forward to Mark is receiving this drone for review in the near future. To see him put it through the test, and we get some feedback and some questions. Again, this may be even more of the ideal beginner's drone because they may actually be able to get some video out of it that somebody would like to look at besides drone nerds or drone heads.
Yeah. So the point being, I get, Ron, that it's going to be slow, but you could fly it up to a position, take some video with it, and get some decent video, because the unstabilized ones, even if you've got the drone sitting still, it's still going to be wiggly and wobbly,
right?
And it won't, or it shouldn't with this.
And to the point you made, the new drone user won't know this, but when you fly like 100 feet above, everything looks like it's going real slow. That's why some people always fly in sport mode. But if you take this Bugs to fly kind of low to the ground, say you take it about 25 feet up and put the throttle full down, it may actually look like you're moving at somewhat of a decent clip. I mean, I'm just guessing. You may be able to get a faster moving effect if you don't fly it real high.
Yeah, absolutely. I look forward to getting it and being able to do a test on it. One other thing I want to mention about that one, Ron, it is not a folding drone. So,
oh yeah, and has everything else we talked about. But well, no, the Tell is not a folding drone either. But of course, it's real tiny. But the other Bugs you reviewed is folding, correct?
It is. Yeah, and in fact, I should have mentioned on the Bug 7, it is also a sub 249 gram, so you don't have to register it or anything. Right. Which also makes it good for a beginner.
Right. And that's another thing, too. The theme here is we're mostly going to be talking about foldable travel drones. We're not really going to be, there's a lot of bigger non-foldable, non-travel drones that if they do fall into this 100,000, we're probably not going to talk about them.
Right.
So,
right.
But anyhow, okay. Have we covered everything on the that we know in the Bugs 20 so far?
I think we have.
And do we have anything else in this price bucket you'd like to bring up?
Yeah, the SG906 Beast drone. And the reason I put that on there is because I have some experience with it. A and B, it's a very popular product.
Now, just for clarification, is this the one that's known as kind of the Beast 1?
This is the Pro, which is kind of the Beast 2.
Okay.
And it has a 2-axis gimbal. Now there is a Beast 3 that has a 3-axis gimbal,
which is kind of a Beast Mini also, right?
It looked the same to me, Ron. Well, I don't know. I thought it looked about the same size, but I don't.
There's a lot of these beasts out of here. I'm confused too.
Yeah. In any case, the Beast drone. What I'll say about it is it does work. It's way more complicated to fly than the Bug 7, but I think even as a beginner, you could stumble your way through it and get it figured out. Now, and I will say that it also, the intelligent flight modes, it has a follow me function, and it has a circle function, an orbit function, and both of those do work relatively well with it, as opposed to some other drones in this category. They'll advertise that stuff, but it doesn't really work. And then it ostensibly has a stabilized camera, but in my experience, the video was just horrible. It just didn't look good. It wasn't just the quality of the video. It was kind of stabilized. It had a lot of jello in it. And I know people will tell you, well, you need to balance your props. Well, you know what? Oh, maybe you do, but I don't need to balance my props on my Hubsan Xeno or the Bug 7 or other drones. So, okay, maybe you do, but I'm counting that against it, because out of the box, you shouldn't have jello, and it does have it does have significant jello, but it's worth talking about because it is so popular, and it is a way for people to get in the air. Comes in at about $150.
No jello on this guy, and he's $99.99. No balance of the props on this guy.
There you go, and that's what I'm saying. When people use that excuse about jello and balancing the props, I'm going, well, okay, yeah, like you said, fly the tello, no jello there.
Balancing the props is like kind of like a 2016 thing to do.
Yeah.
So, okay,
and so that's really all we had in that sub 200 category, and acknowledging that we know there's many more drones there. Those are the ones that Ron and I felt comfortable talking about.
And all these drones we talked about so far, like Marcus was saying, kind of for beginners or newbies or people on a real strict budget. I mean, if you already own like a Mavic type drone, or you had a Phantoms, getting these drones really don't offer anything for you except if you wanted to, if you wanted something you could race around, and if it broke, you didn't care. Otherwise, it'd be no use getting any of these drones.
Yeah, let me also add, Ron, that any of these drones in this category, you're not going to be satisfied with for very long. They're just going to whet your appetite for what you can do with a real drone, because they're not, you'll have a little fun with them, but after you master it and you fly it, 5 or 6 or 10 times, you're going to be wanting to take that next step, which in my mind is kind of the purpose of these drones. You don't know if you really want to be in the hobby or not. You try one out and then you will know.
And here's the oldest argument in the drone game here. A lot of people say, you buy a real cheap drone, under $100 drone, learn to fly, get your feet wet. If you crash it or break something or you got to fix it, you don't have much invested or whatever, and then step up and get something nicer, which and I'm not taking either side on this debate or whatever. So that's one side of the debate. The other side of the debate is, well, why keep spending your money over and over again? Why not just go out and get the drone, the middle ground drone where, you'll be happy with it for, a while. You won't have to immediately buy something else. You won't have a whole room full of drones because you upgrade every time you hit a plateau in your abilities. So I'm not even taking sides in an argument. That's just kind of the two ways to look at it.
It is. I will kind of take sides, Ron, because I kind of agree with the side of it that says, hey, if you start in this next category we're going to talk about, you're going to save that $150 or $200 that you might have wasted in the lower category, and you're going to be much happier with the product.
Well, that begs the next question, Marcus. In the next price bucket, we'll say the $200 to $400 category, is that the next bucket?
Sub 300.
Sub 300 bucket. Who is our number one contender in the sub $300 price bucket here for affordable camera drones?
Well, I put two of them in there, Ron, and there may be others, but these are two that I have experience with, and I know Ron has experience with at least one of them, and I'm sure there's other products out there that people can talk about. But I put the Eachine EX4 and the original Hubsan Xeno in that category.
Oh, good. And to clarify things, the Eachine EX4 is kind of a Spark clone, right? A DJI Spark clone in many ways.
Yeah, well, it's a foldable drone, so I don't know if it's a Spark clone, but it's okay. But it is the original version. The Eachine EX4 is the Banggood branded version of it. It started life as the Seafly Faith drone, and I think the JJRC version is the X12 or.
So maybe it's more of a Mavic 1 clone.
I would say, although it's a little smaller than that, but I just think it was their version of a folding stabilized camera drone. And yeah, for me, well, do you want me to launch into it, Ron, and then I'll let you talk about the Xeno?
Right into it, we're there.
Yeah. The Eachine EX4 was just a big disappointment for me.
Now it has a stabilized video, correct?
It does, and as I recall, it's a 2-axis gimbal, which is good enough. That's what the Spark had.
That's probably one to clone, not so much in the folding, but in the specs. In
the specs wise, yeah, I think you're probably right there, Ron. And now
is the third axis via electronic image stabilization?
Yeah, I believe it did have EIS for that yaw motion.
Good.
I had limited success with it. I'll tell you, the app was pretty darn clunky to me, and I use an iPhone. There are people that say it works much better under Android. That may be, but I'm telling you, I used an iPhone, and it was disappointing, would be the best way to describe it. I finally did get a couple of good flights out of it. But it was not user-friendly. It was fairly complicated to figure out all the steps and all the things you needed to do with it. And I did finally was able to, it took me a long time to get to where I could calibrate the compass on it. The instruction manual, again, is small and it's vague in some spots. The disappointment to me is when you pull it out of the box, it looks like a high quality product, but it just doesn't live up to how it feels and how it looks. And it's about $209.99 is what I saw it for on Banggood.
So it's the high end of this price bucket. Okay.
Yeah, it's at the lower end of the sub 300, I would say. So
wait, say the price. I thought you said it was $299.
It's $209.99.
I'm sorry, I missed the O. Okay, $209. So it's the very bottom of the bucket. And now, what was the flight time and the range on this roughly?
Yeah, so I think the flight time was about 15 minutes. And now I was never successful in taking it out very far, but I know like our friend Ryan Duvall, he took it out about 1 kilometer one time. So I know it'll do it. And it has some intelligent flight modes, like it'll do an orbit. It's a little bit weird about the way you have to do it. Again, when I say it's not user friendly, so you hit the orbit button, the drone starts in a yaw, just starts spinning around. And then what you have to do is back it off from there, and then it will do an orbit. And there again, the instructions weren't very clear about how to do that. You just kind of have to experiment around and figure some of that stuff out. Again, it would do tracking, but it's GPS tracking, so it didn't keep you in frame very well. But the big thing for me, the reason that you buy a GPS camera drone is for good stabilized video, and that's where this thing fell down completely for me. It was more stable than something completely unstabilized, but it wasn't fully stabilized. Plus, it had what I call micro jello in it, shakes in it that you would get jello spots. And for me, I don't know, why buy the damn drone then? When you're looking for a camera drone, it just didn't do it for me. And listen, I know there's a ton of fans out there of this drone, and if it works for you, I'm happy about that. I'm just saying that it didn't work very well for me.
Hey, let's do a disclaimer here that that's gonna apply to a lot of the non-DJI drones we talk about. With drones like this Eachine EX4, the drone Marcus got made different mechanically and software wise than the one Ryan got, and it could be slightly or it could be dramatic. Maybe Ryan's is dramatically better than Marcus's, and that will happen across a lot of the non-DJI products we're going to talk about here. That your experience may be different than Mark's experience with the same exact drone.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But the other thing that it was the learning curve. It has a fairly steep learning curve. So one of the things you would hope for on a drone in this category would be fairly easy to learn. And there were some things that I had to learn about the drone just from comments in the video I put out. People would comment, no, try it this way. And I'd go, oh, okay, well, too bad that's not in the instruction manual,
And that makes perfect sense. If you buy yourself like a Mavic 2 Pro or something, you would expect a big learning curve, but you don't expect the learning curve on a $209 drone. Hey, just to get out the door real quick, and we'll do this for the rest of drones now that we're in a real big category. And these are basically just one-line answers. What's the strength of the drone and what's the weakness of the drone?
Well, the strength of the drone is I guess that it is a GPS drone and it does have a stabilized camera, although the output isn't what it should be. The biggest weaknesses to me are that the camera output isn't what it should be, video output isn't what it should be, and that it is a little bit clunky to learn.
It sounds like the strength was the price point.
That's a good point. That you're right. That is the number one. Good. Thank you, Ron. That's exactly right. The price point.
Okay. We move along quickly here, especially in the lower price things. Now, what's the next drone in his price bucket?
So, Ron, since we both have this one, I'll let you take it. And this is one of my favorites. I'm not even going to try and hide my bias here.
Could I take a wild guess and say this is it?
Yeah, I've had more fun with that little Hubsan Xeno and
Hubsan Xeno1.
Yeah,
released at the end of 2018, right?
Yes.
It went on like kind of an advanced pre-order, like around, I don't know, like end of September that year, and most of us received it kind of the end of November, early part of December period of that year. And when it first came out, it had a lot of firmware issues. The camera wasn't working right at the beginning. The video kind of looked bad, and it had a lot of little problems. But they kind of nailed the hardware, which is the most important thing. The hardware was right on it. It not only was a GPS drone that had a kilometer range, had, I think it said it had 20-something minutes of battery life. It gets about around 15, 16 minutes of battery life in practice. But, had a 4K camera, 30 frames per second. And once after about 3, 4, or 5 months of firmware updates, the video actually was acceptable. And the 3-axis gimbal, it was actually stable. And the video, for that price point, the video is perfectly acceptable. And, it still sells today. And you can get this anywhere from the low 200s to the high 200s. Again, it can vary greatly depending on what day it was, but I wouldn't pay any more than about $250 for it. I just keep looking until somebody has it on sale or has a coupon. But
Ron, let me add. So the best price.
I've spoken too much. You take over.
Well, no. I just wanted to, because you were talking about price. I investigated that yesterday. The best price I could find yesterday was $299.99. But to your point, often you see it at $250.
Yeah. I mean, if you haven't got it already, you can wait. You can wait another couple weeks or a month until you see the price drop. But actually, I mean, if you're a first time buyer of a drone and you kind of don't want to start at the low end, especially if you live in a climate like Marcus and I do, where we have winters where it's windy and the weather's kind of rough, and you cannot fly something like this in winter weather conditions. You could take this out on I'm not saying a hurricane wind, but you could take this out on a breezy, blustery winter day, and you could fly it around, and you're not gonna lose it. It's not gonna fly away. I mean, don't take it out with a 50-mile-per-hour gust, but in normal wind conditions, even gusts up to 20-some miles per hour, this thing will still fly and come back to you. And as Marcus always said, the return to home on this works great. So if you're a new pilot and you need to rely on return to home, this thing, it comes back on almost every default. Low battery, out of range, loss of connection. It almost always comes back, home again. I think you have to calibrate this every time you fly, correct?
So
it forces you to calibrate every time, doesn't it?
Well, the short answer is no. So they came up with recently on one of the app upgrades, they give you a status screen when you first fire it up, and it'll tell you if you need to calibrate or not. But to your point, Ron, I found my best experience was to do a compass calibration every time, and that seemed to help with stability. Now, that's anecdotal, right? That's just my personal observations. Let me talk about a couple of the cons of this drone.
Before we leave that compass thing, let's do real quick that if you want to do any of the intelligent flight modes, you have to do what's that? You have to do the test.
Yeah, the GPS.
And do the accuracy test before you take off. Like, I mean, you can't do it like in when you're ready to start your smart mode thing. You have to do it early. Yeah.
Well, you could fly it down in, but
right. But it's better just to take care of it right away.
Well, and one of the cool things about the Xeno, the original Xeno, the Xeno 2 is different, but the original Xeno will ask you to do that GPS accuracy test before you take off. The Xeno 2 does not, so you can kind of forget.
The Xeno 2 tells you got to bring it back in close to do the test.
Right.
When you try to do stuff when it's 1,000 feet away from you. Oh, no, bring it in close.
Yeah, and I think it has to be within. Yeah, it has to be within 10 meters of you or something like that to do that test.
And you're going. Oh, I'm going to stop talking because you're doing downsides. So this is a downside. So I'm going to let you see if you mention it here.
Yeah. So the one of the biggest downsides I can think of is the firmware update process is very clunky. You have to update the flight controls, the camera, and the gimbal, all three separately, and you have to do two of them on your computer. The other one you have to do with an SD card, and then it gets a little complicated.
And you better have a Windows computer around the house.
And you got to have a Windows computer. I will say, once you do it once or twice, it isn't that tough, but it is. I can see where it would be intimidating to some people. And then I had another con that I was thinking about, Ron, and I've kind of forgotten what it is now. But that's probably the biggest one for sure, is those firmware updates. Oh, the other one is it is prone to battery issues. So there's a limited amount of life. They're not smart batteries, and Femi upgraded the firmware that it now can recognize a battery when it starts to go bad. But a lot of people lost their drones. There's circuitry inside that battery that when it reaches an imbalanced state, it literally shuts down the battery. And so their drone just fell out of the sky and got destroyed. Hubsan has since taken care of that with some upgrades that it tells you when you have a bad battery. It says, do not fly with this battery. But there's a limited life to those batteries. Fortunately, they're cheap. They're about
yeah. That's the good side. These from all the drones we're going to talk about after this one, where the batteries are much more expensive than these batteries.
What would you say the pros are, Ron?
The pros, we kind of touched on a lot of them. 4K 30 video, stabilized with a 3-axis gimbal at this price range is
nice stable horizon.
And this is the only one in that category. And of course, as we said, good reliable flyer. Easy to fly. You forgot to mention though. I mean, I hate to jump around. The downside, especially at the beginning, was the Hubsan drop and the instability at takeoff or whatever. But again, a lot of the drones we've talked about so far are, also had this issue too, or whatever. You don't expect the precision thing, and this does not have any downward facing sensors, so no optical flow. It's all just GPS and the barometer in it. But it when it first came out, it moved around more than a lot of other GPS drones without optical flow, or it was it just it was kind of a letdown. People thought they were getting a mini Mavic and expected to stay right in the spot, and it did not. Now they have greatly improved that through firmware updates, but at first, it was like a yo-yo up and down. But again, that's for people that test drones and drone channels. That was a big deal. If you just flew a drone and didn't know about YouTube. Most people just take their drones up, get them up to 50, 100 feet or whatever. At that point, you would never, ever see this. It was only if you had your GoPro going and you were filming a talking head YouTube video and had the drone hanging there for 5 minutes that, this would really bother you.
It's not a drone that I would recommend for low-level flight. And when I'm talking about low-level flight, I'm talking about, say, 10 feet off the ground or lower. It's just not the drone for that. The other pro that I forgot to mention, Ron, was that all of the intelligent flight modes on it work very well. The tracking on it is phenomenal. The tracking works really good, and you can do it either GPS tracking or you can do it optically, and it works very, very well.
And we were all amazed when we pulled this out of the box. And I think we kind of knew it, but that the optical tracking actually worked at this price point, because at that point, most of us only saw that in our GPS on a DJI drones, and for this kind of a Hubsan budget price drones that had that kind of blew us away.
To this day, there's several more expensive drones that do not perform intelligent flight modes as well as the Hubsan Xeno, the original Xeno.
Right. So of all the drones we talked about so far, the kind of wrap up here, and we'll do our strengths and weaknesses here. If you were just getting started and your budget allowed it, and if you had the confidence to think, well, I don't need to buy a sub $50 drone because I'm going to crash it and destroy it. If you have confidence enough, this is your starting point. What do you think about that, Marcus?
So, Ron, you just said that so well. That is exactly right. Now, if you're patient enough to wait till you find it on sale someplace for $250, God, okay, yeah, you can spend $170 on a Bugs B20. This Hubsan Xeno is 5 times the drone that MJX B20 is, and if you can get it for $250, it is going to be. It is, to me, it's the minimum level of a real GPS camera drone, and that you will be happy with and fly and enjoy.
Of all the drones we've talked about so far, this is the first one we talked about that you could post a video from this on social media, whether it be YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, whatever you post it, and somebody may actually watch it.
Yeah, that's
the other one. You could post a video and nobody's going to watch more than a couple seconds of it and flip away from it.
Yeah.
So, strengths and weaknesses, Marcus, of the Hubsan Xeno1.
Yeah, well, strengths, of course, is that it's a GPS drone. It's it flies very, very well. It flies good. It's very reliable. I found it to be very reliable. I've tortured it. I've pulled my phone off. I've shut off the controller. I've done all those things. Just test it, and the drone always comes home. It'll come right back to you every time. But the big thing is, at this price point, to get the video quality that you get off this drone is just tremendous. It does shoot in 4K 30. No, does it look as good as your Mavic Pro? Absolutely not, but it looks good. The colors are nice on it. It has a perfectly stable horizon. The gimbal performs very well. The cons for me are what we talked about earlier. At the low level stabilized, it's going to move around a little bit, and you're going to want to be careful with it. Battery longevity is not good. You have to be careful with your batteries. And what was the other one I was talking about, Ron? Shoot.
Unstable batteries and updating
the software. Yeah, gosh darn it. I'm sorry, folks. Hey, I'm old, right?
I want to go quickly here, but I will note that if you get yours from the factory now and the firmware has all been updated to the current firmware update, you probably never have to update it again or whatever. In the old days, Mark talked about the old days when it was shipped as kind of almost like a beta or something like that, and it needed software updates regularly. But nowadays, if you receive it in the current firmware, Dave, you never touch it again, it'll be fine. Okay, I'm gonna give you my quickies on positive price versus performance or whatever. You can't get more drone at this price than you can as far as camera, especially camera and flying too. And the cons, I guess the battery issues have mostly been solved. If you're a new user, you're probably not going to see the battery issues anymore. And we talked about the firmware update. So the big con would be it's not as stable as you would expect from a drone that could do everything else as well. But again, if you just take it up and fly it or whatever, it's not going to be a big hindrance. Did you have a final point you wanted to make before we move on to the next category?
No. I think we've kind of beat that horse to death. But I will say there probably are other drones in this category that we haven't talked about, Ron, but they're none that you or I have experience with.
Thank you. Okay, our next bucket will be what, 300 to 400, Marcus?
Well, I put sub 500. I kind of
okay, because and we had to do that, folks, because the prices on a lot of these drones hover between the upper 300s and the 400s on the daily, so we can't pigeonhole some of these in the 300 to 400 to 400 500 because on the daily they're in a different category. So what's the first drone we have in this category we need to talk about?
Well, that is the Dji Mavic Mini, Ron. I
think I got it right here, folks.
Yeah.
Optical flow and all that.
Yeah, it's just a little jewel.
Floppy propellers.
Got the floppy propellers. Yeah. You want to start with that one, Ron?
Well, the DJI Mavic Mini released in November of last year. I think we first got the notifications coming out in October, and it was a long rumored drone, the Dji Sparks Successor, which I'll bounce back to in a minute on that. So it came out, and it was the big selling point was under 249 grams because at that point there was a lot of talk about the FFA, putting in these new rules and regulations and so on. So a lot of people were concerned about that. Plus, in foreign countries, 249 grams is even a bigger deal than it is in the U.S. You people in Canada know what I'm talking about. So it came out, and it really was kind of went backwards in some ways compared to the drone who replaced the Spark. It didn't have all the features because they introduced a new app called the Fly app, which wasn't as full of features as the Go 4 app, but since has received many useful updates. But the bottom line is that the drone only does 2.7K, not 4K, but the 2.7K is some of the best 2.7K you'll see out there. The JPEG photos are very good, among the better JPEG photos, especially in this category. It's easily the best photos coming out of it. And thing flies great. great range for a Wi-Fi drone. Excuse me, folks. Great range. And I'm going to have to get a drink here. Marcus, you want to
take go ahead, Ron. The Mavic Mini, because of, I guess well, there's so many good things about it that where do you start? But the camera is the star of the show, and that probably applies to this whole group because we're talking about camera drones after all. The little Mini punches way above its weight class in camera quality with that 2.7K camera. The other standout for me is the flight controls on it. When I have that thing up in the air, Ron, I feel like I'm flying one of my big Mavics. I don't know the difference because it's so precise. It's so smooth. It flies so well. You talk about stable. You take that thing up, and it's just like it's hanging off a string. I flew the other day. Made a flight over by the Boise River, and I was in and amongst some trees. I was so comfortable with that Mini because it was so stable. I never would have done a flight like that with the Xeno. Never, ever.
No hups to drop on the Mini.
Right. It's very, very stable, and it
punches way above its weight class too in flight time.
Good point. And it's lithium-ion batteries.
And in signal too. It's probably the best Wi-Fi signal of anything out there in any price category, right?
Best Wi-Fi drone I've ever seen. No question about it. Lithium-ion batteries that you can leave charged without worrying about them, and with that 30-minute flight time. And I don't know if I've ever got 30 minutes, but I've certainly got 25 minutes out of them. It flies for a long time on a charge. God, just a fun little product. You want me to start with the downside, Ron?
I'm trying to get the battery. I always forget it has it has a little hatch here, and then I could never get the battery.
Yeah, you got to push down on the top of it there. It's got a little button on the top there to release it. Yeah.
This is an unusual battery design for DJI, unlike any of their other drones.
Yeah, totally agree. Well, Ron, you've had more issues with the one big con that I'm thinking of than I have. Well, I don't know. We both had issues with it, but I know
you had the more dramatic one.
Yeah.
Mine's not dramatic. Marcus is referring to the wind, the problem with the wind. And Marcus has a famous video where he took it out to the Snake River when it was kind of new and he's kind of had confidence in it, maybe a little bit too much confidence. And he got in a situation where the wind, was so strong they could not get it back to him. And he had to do I'll call it a satellite landing. And I'll let Marcus finish the story.
Yeah, so what I did was I was on my way back, and I knew I wasn't going to make it all the way back to the home point. So I looked for a location, a recognizable landmark where I could land the drone and go find it. And that's exactly what I did. And the irony of that situation, Ron, is this does have a Find My Drone feature on it. I forgot all about it in that instance, and I didn't use it. But like I said, I looked for a landmark and I was able to drive right up to where I landed it and pick it up. But it is not, if you live someplace that you have frequent high winds, that is a downside of this drone.
Yeah, when I first received it, one of my first flights, I'm down at the beach and it's just as windy as can be. And, I could see it fighting the wind. But I mean, I knew the wind was too strong. And so I kept it low and close and it did fine. In fact, for its size and weight, it's remarkably good in the wind.
Well it does, sure.
Yeah. I mean, again, you can't believe this thing does as well as it does in the wind. But my big complaint is around about the end of April, they came up with a big firmware update that added a lot of good stuff to it, but they added a wind warning thing in it, whatever. And now when you take it up, and I'm going to say anything above like 12 miles per hour, 12 to 50 miles per hour, you get the constant wind warning on your screen that it's high wind, and you click it to make it go away. It comes right back high wind. So you do your whole flight, click away the high wind thing, but you have no problem flying it whatsoever because it is decent in moderate winds, but it's warning you, even though you know that you have no problems getting up or back and so on. So that they've went overzealous with the wind warning, I guess, because a lot of people had flyways or experience like Marcus, but it kind of hinders people that know what they're doing. They're not taking that far away, and you should be able to disable those wind warnings. And it took me a long time. It was even vibrating my phone with the wind warning. I forget how I fixed that, but it took me a long time to even get it where my phone wasn't constantly vibrating every time it had the wind warning.
Yeah. I can think of one more con, Ron, and I almost forgot about this, and that is those rear propellers. If you get the Fly More package and you don't put it into the case correctly, you can deform those rear propellers, and you can have some problems with them and have to replace them.
Yeah, these are the thinnest, lightest propellers. I'm going to say they're even thinner and lighter than the Inafi propellers.
I believe you're correct. They really went for lightweight with this drone, and they work fine. But and if you're careful about the way you put it in that case, you're just fine. I wasn't, and I had that unintended, uncommanded descent issue that people have had with it. And it's the damnedest thing you ever saw. The drone would be flying, then all of a sudden it would just go straight down, and boy, you'd hit the throttle, and it didn't work. With a little research, I was able to figure it out, and I just replaced those rear props, and it's fine. And now I'm very careful about the way I put it in the case, and I've not had an issue with it since.
I don't have the Fly More kit, and I just fold up and usually stick it into a slot like in a camera bag that a lens should go in, and I've never had any issues. And I recommend anybody. Like a lot of my drones, I have the straps to hold the propellers in place when I transport them around. And I'll take a whole video about this. But I recommend when at home not to keep your drones in cases or propeller things on or whatever. Just take the drone out of its cage. Just let it sit in the shelf. And kind of let it breathe or whatever, not mostly so the propellers do not get bent, and they won't in all cases, but it's easy to do to prevent that. And my other downside will be that this sits. You see, I have these PGY razors. If you sit this on the ground and the ground's not completely flat, like a tabletop or whatever, the gimbal will get stuck when it's going through its gimbal test to hit the ground. That's how low it is. It's like having some real low sports car or whatever, where the pipes are hitting the thing. They said if it's not a completely flat surface, the gimbal guard will get stuck in the gimbal. It's almost like you have to hold it like this to do the gimbal startup.
Right.
That's a minor con, but
it's worth mentioning. Sure.
Yeah. At first, it happened to me a lot. Now, this doesn't have any obstacle avoidance, but no drone we've talked about, I think in this price bucket will have obstacle avoidance. But this is just personal opinion. But I like the 2.7K 30 frame video coming out of this better than the other 4K drones we're going to talk about in this price bucket.
Coming on up, and I don't disagree with you. The other two things that I want to mention, Ron, is it has quick shots on it, although and a good range of quick shots, although there are limitations to them. It does not have tracking. And I know a lot of people like tracking, but this drone does not have it.
But it makes up for it by having optical flow that actually works 100%.
Phenomenal. Yeah. Totally agree.
As well as GPS. And Marcus already mentioned that it performs very well. It's like flying a little sports car or whatever. It's it's very good. Okay, how about what do I call this? What's the best thing about it and what's the worst thing? What am I calling that when I'm doing that?
Pros and cons, or
one line. What's the best thing about it? One line, and what's the worst thing about it? One line.
Okay, well, the best thing about it to me are the flight controls and the camera.
Okay, and the con.
The con, I guess, would be the wind.
Good ones. Yeah. I guess for me the biggest pro, and it doesn't have. The size is the big pro for me because it doesn't have any one standout category. Camera's good, not great. The range is good, not great. It's not any one thing about it that's outstanding on its own, but it's a great package. And so price price versus performance on this is kind of maybe the one thing. Travel, it's travel or take it with you anywhere. It's the easiest drone to travel that you can get video that you can post any place. And if you got a good subject matter, nobody's going to say, well, the video could be better, or the pictures or whatever. And the con would be, I had the con, and I've already forgot the con. The con is, it's not as good, not as robust in the wind as some of the other drones we're going to talk about in this category. So, you want one final thought before we move on?
I thought of one more pro, Ron. You made me think of it when you were talking about it as a travel drone. It is also very unobtrusive. So it's a drone that's very non-threatening, that you can fly in places that people don't even pay any attention to it.
Yeah, you take it up at the park, whatever. Somebody, oh, look, that guy's got a little toy drone over there. Right. Yeah. You're probably not going to get accosted too much by drone haters with this.
Right. Hey, Ron, so the next two drones on the list here in the sub 500 category, I'm going to kind of lump them together into one. And okay. I want to say that neither one of us own this drone, but I think we can talk about it because it's similar enough to the original Hubsan Xeno. So there's the Hubsan Xeno Pro, and it's at $399 on Banggood. And then the Hubsan Xeno Pro Plus, which is a new drone, and I actually have one of those on order. It is also $399 with a discount code. And the difference between the Xeno Pro and the original Xeno is range primarily. I'm trying to remember what the advertised range is. I think the Xeno Pro is 4 kilometers, something like that. But the Xeno Pro Plus, they're saying 8 kilometers. And the other thing about the Xeno Pro Plus is they're saying a 43-minute flight time. They put a smart battery in it this time, and it's a bigger battery. So that one may be interesting. And the difference between the original Xeno and this is it does do the firmware updates through the app, so you don't have to do them manually. Now, we should also mention that we do personally know people that have had camera problems with these drones. Brian Singleton has never got his Xeno Pro to work correctly, and I know he's not the only one. Other people have had focus issues with the camera. But that's really all I can say about it because I don't really own one yet. Ron, do you have anything to add to the Xeno Pro?
Just that I saw it on sale this morning for $349 already. It's already taking a price cut, and it probably hasn't even shipped yet.
Yeah. So if you're somebody that's looking for, you're talking about the regular Pro or the
the Xeno Pro Plus. The one I saw a price cut to $349 this morning. I'll try to include a link in here. I think it was Banggood, but not positive. Yeah, $349 this morning.
Maybe I'll cancel my order and order that one then.
Well, Marcus jokes around about this, but we saw with the Femi X8 Se 2020 edition, the people that grabbed it for the $349 price seemed to get it later than the people ordered for more money after they did. So be careful on these drones. It seems like the cheaper you get it, the slower it ships, because somebody after you may order for more money and those will come sooner. So it seems like they're prioritizing people who spend more money on them.
Yeah, just because you ordered it early doesn't mean you're going to get it first either.
Right. If you order the cheapest price, you may fall to the end of the line.
Yeah. Hey, now the next one, Ron, is I know a drone that you and I both have some fairly strong opinions on. We both own it, and I'm quite sure we're going to have a number of pros and cons, but I think you should talk about this one because you have a fair amount of experience, and you probably had a better experience with it than I did.
We always call it the little Hubsan Xeno. How about the big Hubsan Xeno2?
Yeah, the Hubsan Xeno2. The best price I could find on that currently on Hubsan US was the best price I could find for $479.
Now, Marcus and I purchased this at the initial release for $399. You haven't seen those prices since then. this is a foldable drone, but it's a large drone, bigger than the Mavic series. This is probably, I don't have one, but I'm going to guess it's more in the size range of an Autel Evo 2.
I agree.
Yeah, this is the biggest foldable drone I own. And, it also has some heft to it. We first heard about this thing in the fall of last year. We were surprised because the Xeno 1 wasn't that old yet. And this had a lot of features everybody was looking for. 4K 60 camera, optical flow, sensors on the bottom, I forget the very strong motors. Just it had a laundry list of things that were on the better drones. So we kind of got excited about it, thinking, oh, Hubsan's really taking that big step from the advanced toy grade up, push at the heels of DJI. So all that excitement kind of waned, and when it took, like Marcus, I ordered ours in about the middle to the end of December, and did not receive the drone until what?
I got mine the end of March.
Yeah. I would say the middle of March or later, before they finally showed up. With basically no legitimate excuse outside saying the coronavirus. And when we received them, I mean, there were a lot of good things and a lot of cons. I mean, one of the most notable things was the lens flare issue on the camera, and also has an exposure issue too. That's probably more of a pain than the lens flare. And I'll tell you, the Xeno 1 had a lens flare on it too, but more acceptable at the budget price.
At that price, right?
But like the con and the pro, this was I got in the middle of the winter. Well, end of March, I guess but believe me, it still feels like winter Jersey Shore here until like May. I mean, I took this up in the gussies when there was. The motors on this thing are as strong as any drone I own, and this is as fast as any drone, maybe the fastest drone I own. So the exact opposite of the Mini. If you live in a windy environment and you're worried about losing your drone, you get this guy, you're really going to take up in a tornado to lose this thing. It can fight about almost any amount of wind thrown at it, and it's a pretty reliable flyer when you get it up there. I mean, out of the box, like the Xeno 1, it had the Hubsan drop issues, but for me, they have mostly been resolved, or we got it down to, if you see a drop, it's just a slight drop, but it kind of hovers right over the pad. I don't see it move anywhere off the pad. The only movement is slightly up and down, but it doesn't move side to side like like it did when I first got it. And the Xeno 1 was side to side, front and back, up and down. It was all four directions when you first got it. So, I mean, again, I did a video where you fly away from the sun, the camera looks pretty good on it. Not as good as the Mini, but to me, the colors on it are better than the Femi when you got the back, to the sun. Now you turn it around and you're going to get a whiteout when you're flying towards the sun. But so it's a mixed bag, really. I mean, Marcus, we talked earlier about. In this kind of drone, nobody's two drones are the same. I got a little bit better one than Marcus. I can tell because just watching all his videos. But I'm still I'm still waiting for the mother of all firmware updates to kind of fix all the little things that are wrong with it. I don't think there's going to be any fix in the lens flare issue, but and I'm still waiting for that update that may or may not come. Marcus,
yeah. So the pros are exactly what you described, Ron. I had mine up to 44 miles an hour the other day, just the last time I flew it. It is.
We said before that problem you had at the Snake River, I mean, with the Mini, not getting it back, that would have never happened if it had been that bird that day, right?
Let me put it to you this way. If you could stack 3 Minis on top of this drone and it still would make it back, no problem. It is a fast, powerful drone. And for that reason, it's fun to fly too. It sounds like
Marcus sounds like a sports car up there, a muscle car, right?
Sounds like a Formula One racer when it's flying by up there, and which is really that's fun in and of itself. And the downsides to me, I guess I'm going to say, if I look at that drone overall, I'm more disappointed in it than I am happy with it. And a couple of things that I've had stability issues with mine from the very beginning that Ron hasn't had so much. In fact, I will say that my original Hubsan Xeno with no downward facing sensors is probably more stable than my Xeno2. I wonder what those sensors, downward sensors, are for. I wonder if they're even hooked up, because they don't seem to do anything. The other issue I'll say is that I have seen often with mine is with the gimbal. In certain situations, you'll get what I call micro shakes, and you can see a little bit of shake in the video. And at this price point, that's just unacceptable. Now, for me, it's mostly when I'm descending. Coming straight down, I'll see shake in that gimbal. Often it's if you're doing quick maneuvers, you'll see it. Nonetheless, it's there, and that's a problem. And of course, Ron already mentioned the sun flare and flying into the sun. Other than that, like you said, when you get the sun at its back, it flies very, very well. Or the camera looks very, very nice. So the other upside I will say, Ron, is it has got a phenomenal connection. That Lease 2 connection, I don't know that I've ever had any kind of connection. Well, I can't say that precisely, but with control connections with the drone, never had any problems. The other issue that I had, and that a lot of people have had, is with losing FPV on the drone. And I took it out the other day. I was going to do a flight comparison with the Femi X8 Se. Got out in the middle of Lucky Peak Reservoir, lost FPV altogether. Fooled around with it, couldn't get it going. I got an SD card warning, tried a different SD card, on and on and on. I ended up, a lot of people have problems with the ribbon cable. That's the cable that connects the main board to the gimbal and the camera on the drone. I knew that people had problems with those, so I preemptively ordered a spare, and I replaced it. Still had an FPV dropout with an SD card warning. I put the highest SD card that I have, a SanDisk Extreme Pro, I think it's called, writes at 90 megabits per second, and that seemed to cure the problem. So we'll see about that. But if you spend this kind of money on the drone, you shouldn't have those kind of issues. You shouldn't be worried about that kind of stuff. So that's what I'll say about that. I guess I would say I have a love-hate relationship with the Hubsan Xeno2.
Yeah, I've never had a lost FPV with mine. In fact, I find the FPV signal it sends back to your phone to be very good for this price range, and the range is good on it. But sorry, I keep getting something in my throat here. I don't know if it's any better than the Mini.
I would argue that it is. I would say it's substantially better than the Mini in my experience, Ron. In fact, I've flown it out over the Snake River. I've flown the Mini out of range. I have never flown the Xeno2 out of control range. Like I said, that I'm putting aside the FPV issue I had, but as far as I've never flown it out of control range ever.
That's good to hear. So we could go on forever here, but at the end of the day, for me, the pros and cons would be the biggest con would be it's most of the time it's overpriced. Outside of that initial $399 sale, no way I would pay over $500 for this drone. If you're paying over $500, there's better options out there.
Right.
Even if you got this at $399, again, it's still a real good firmware update away from being a refined drone. The potential's there, the hardware is right, outside the lens flare issue. But the biggest pro would be how well it flies. I mean, if you disregard everything, but how well it flies up there, that's a big pro.
Yeah, it's got so much potential. It's close, but no cigar. So the pros to me are the speed of it. It has the controller is way improved over the original Xeno. It handles well when you are in the air flying it. It handles well. It's that low level flight that for me it doesn't it doesn't do very well.
Mark, is this the first drone we talked about so far that has an LCD on the controller?
It is, isn't it? Yeah, it is. Yeah. Yep. Which is pretty darn cool.
Again, this drone's a bewildering drone because it has some really nice touches to it, but the overall package just leaves you.
So Ron, I think you kind of nailed it. I think you said it very succinctly that it's one good firmware update from probably being a solid drone. The way mine is right now, I cannot recommend this drone. There's other better choices in that category.
And there's an upgrade to this drone coming, the Xeno2 Plus.
That's right.
A big selling point there is increased range, which, well, we've already said the range isn't the weak point to begin with here. So they're improving something that's already good.
Yeah. So who knows when that thing comes out? Maybe they took care of a lot of these other details we're talking about, but how are we going to know?
Yeah, and hopefully it's the same software and I don't know, a process in there. So if they have a firmware update for that, they can just apply it here and make this a better drone too. But let's move on to the next drone on the list here, Marcus.
Okay, so this is one that is near and dear to my heart because I've flown the original version and now the 2020 version, and that is the Femi Xs X8 Se 2020. I wish they'd have named it something different. That name is a mouthful, drives me nuts. But it's priced right. Today, you can get it for $389 with a discount code on Banggood. What can I say about this drone? And I'm talking about primarily the 2020 version. Again, it's a drone with a solid connection. I know other people have had issues with it. I can say mine. I've never even come close to flying it out of range. It has a good, solid FPV on it. It's another very fast drone. It's a feature-rich drone with a ton of intelligent flight modes, tracking modes, etc. If there's anything that has let this drone down for me, Ron, it's the camera. It does shoot in 4K 60. It has the specs. It just doesn't. The reality of it doesn't live up to the specs. It is also has an HDR feature.
Well, the new one's 4K 60 because the first one was 4K 30.
Yeah. Oh no.
This has HDR.
Yeah, this has HDR. Excuse me, I misspoke, Ron. It is only 4K 30. I'm sorry. 4K 60 is the Xeno2.
Right.
Thank you very much. But it has HDR.
First drone we talked about so far that has the only drone we talked about is 4K 60 so far.
Was the Xeno2. And
this is the first drone we talked about that's going to have HDR.
HDR, that is correct. Now, the issues I have with this one, and you've seen it, Ron, are that the white balance seems to be out of whack on it. I've tried it on automatic, and it drives you crazy because it keeps
a new problem. Yeah.
Yeah, and I put it on a bright sunny day, and it's way too warm.
It doesn't have a manual Kelvin setting to dial it in on your own, which would be a solution.
Right. It's
the opposite of the Mini, which only has a manual Kelvin settings.
Right. But it's also another one of those drones that it's a fast performer. I don't know if it's quite as fast as the Xeno2,
but it's close.
But it's close. It'll fly better than 40 miles an hour with no issue. Has a really good flight time. I'm going to say a 25-minute plus flight time. I think they claim a 32-minute flight time, but of course you never get that. Right. You can easily get 25 minutes. I can say that. And
but the Xeno has about the same flight time.
Yeah.
Xeno2's got about that in that 25 range.
Yep. I will also add that it is far more stable than the Xeno2. It is not as stable as like the Mavic Mini or any of the Mavics because it'll move around a little bit in a hover. But overall, I would say it's fairly stable. It's not like it's making any scary moves on you, you know. So yeah, that's about it. You know, like I said, the only con I can come up with right now is the issues that I've had with the camera on that drone with the white.
Oh, you didn't touch on the horizon.
You know, I did have problems with the horizon. Thank you. With a crooked horizon, Ron, ironically, I don't know if it's a firmware update or what, but the last few times I've taken it out, the horizon has been just fine. So take that for what it's worth.
That played you in your 2018 edition also.
It did as well. And the 2018 version, I'm going to say that I like the camera quality better on the 2018 version than the 2020 at this point. But just like you said with the Xeno2, it's probably one firmware update away from correcting that. And Ron, you flew the 2018 version that's similar enough. You must have some thoughts here as well.
Yeah, I mean, you covered so much, and we got to get moving along here. I'm going to limit. I'm going to say I love the finish to the Femi X8 2018 as far as the plastic on the drone, how it felt, the controller, which I know it's a favorite of yours. Just the controller and the overall finish was a cut above what you get in the Xeno2. You know, not DJI quality yet, but a cut above the the Hubsan Xeno2, which again, I know something that's, you know, well made. It feels good in hands. Doesn't necessarily is going to play out as better, but it feels good to have a better made product. So, you know, that and the consistently lower price point of the Femi X8, either one, the 2018, 2020, they're the biggest pluses for me. And I guess the cons would be that the camera quality, is really no better than the Xeno2, especially when you're flying away from the sun. In fact, I may like the Xeno2 a little bit better. And I only had the Marcus 2018, but the horizon issue, like I never had a flight where the horizon is straight the whole flight. You know, you could yaw it real fast and correct it, but it would always uncorrect itself again. But so that's mine in a nutshell. At the price point of $399, it's a contender. And like Marcus said, it may not be as fast as Xeno2, but it's fast enough that if you've taken out a climb or two and a headwind blows up, you're still going to be able to fly it back into the wind and get it home safely, which is a big plus to a lot of people. Marcus?
It's huge, yeah, and that's a good point, Ron. The fact that it's a fast, powerful drone. If you're living in an area where you have a little wind, you're going to be fine with the Femi X8 SE. So yeah, that I think we about covered that category, Ron. The next one,
we may never get back to this, so I'll just put. We were take this at the end, but we're running a real slow. We're almost at an hour 22 here. For a discontinued drone in this category, if you have somebody that's trying to sell a Spark for a decent price, a Spark, is a contender with these drones we just mentioned in many ways. Yeah,
and that might fit into that honorable mention used category.
Yeah, we'll just throw them in now because we're running real late here. And the Bebop 2 we'll throw into a honorable mentions category too. Drone you cannot buy new anymore, but if somebody's selling one used on Facebook Marketplace or whatever, it's something to look at. 1080p
video with the Bebop 2, but it's electronic image stabilization, EIS, but it works very well. So yeah, if you can get one of those cheap enough, yeah, it's probably worth talking about.
So, okay, what's our next category, Marcus?
This one is near and dear to your heart, I know. Sub 700, and there's only one I could think of that fit in there, and you can buy it for $699 on B&H right now. We've seen it cheaper before, but the good old Parrot Anafi, just a phenomenal piece of equipment.
The longest, thinnest drone ever made.
Yes, indeed.
And this is the successor to the Bebop that we just touched on for a few minutes. It's 4K 30 drone, HDR. It has about like a 20-minute battery. I mean, I don't know what it says is, but it flies for almost 20 minutes. It has the little thin propellers kind that we showed you a minute. But this drone's older. The drones we're talking about, this came out over 2 years ago now. And one of his big selling points is it has the gimbal that goes all the way down, all the way up, which I don't think any of the drone has. It's still the only one with that little feature. Of course, there's GPS. Cons would be the range is limited compared to a lot of drones that we're talking about, but it is an older drone here. So in its day, the range wasn't as short as it seems now. And it's actually pretty good in the wind, for a small, I don't know what the weight is, but, it seems to be lighter than.
I think it's about 350 grams, something like that.
I mean, I don't know why, but it's surprisingly good in the wind. You probably won't get this blown away from you. The app is amazing, full featured, almost everything. It's like the DJI Go 4 app, almost everything you want in there, someplace or another. And the camera for over 2-year-old drone, the camera still holds up well. In fact, it's the best drone we've talked about yet as far as camera quality.
HDR.
Yeah. You can shoot raw. I mean, what do you call like log picture profile, which the Femi's the only other drone we talked about that you can shoot in a flat log profile like this. But believe me, this log's a lot flatter than the Femi one. So and we put this in this category, but most people buy this drone as not most people, but a lot of people buy this drone as a refurb for under somewhere in the low 400.
I looked it up yesterday. $415 as a refurb, and that's just a steal. Yeah.
So at that price, it beats any of the drone we discussed as far as picture quality. If you're a photographer, maybe a real estate guy or just amateur photographer, whatever, this is the one that gets it far. 20 megapixel camera on this guy. The other ones we talked about, I think were mostly all 12 megapixels, and the tele was a 5 megapixel. So this is a 20 megapixel. And that's kind of it in a nutshell. I mean, it's kind of end of life. You can still buy it new, but right now, Parrot's kind of getting out of the consumer drone business, but they could get back in someday. And they make a like enterprise version of this now. So
it'll probably be supported for a while for that reason, Ron, because of the enterprise version. One thing that you didn't mention was that you will never see your props in the picture with this drone. So I wanted to mention that. To me, Ron, the downside, the con is I can only think of one. There's only one con to this drone, and that is not control range, but limited FPV range, that the FPV can drop out on you at 500 meters or so. Now, I've had it out in the country where I've flown it out a kilometer with no problem. But other than that, I'm trying to think of anything that I don't like about that drone. It is just a piece of art.
It has all the sensors on the bottom you need. It's no problem. It hovers. It won't. You set up the air. It won't move. Even the wind, it'll stay right there. No drop. No wandering around. It's rock solid. And I don't know if they have precision landing, but it comes right back, and then you have to hit the button for the final landing or whatever.
It does have precision landing, and it's as good as any of them, or if not better.
But it won't. You can't hit the button and go all the way to the ground. It comes back with about 5-6 feet off the ground. You have to hit the land button for it to come all the way down.
Yeah, there's 2 drones that do that. That and the Skydio are the ones that you have to tell it to land.
Right. So the GPS is rock solid on it. It always knows where it is, and you could. I hate to admit this, but you could fly this thing down. I mean, I've been uncareful with the battery, and I've had it land on me with 2 or 3% battery on it, so it won't drive you crazy. Like the Xeno 1 or whatever. I mean, once it gets to a 25% battery life or whatever, you can't do much at all with it.
Yeah, and with any of the Mavics, if you get down to 10%, it puts itself into landing mode, and the only way you can keep it from landing is to hold the stick up if you're below 10% battery.
Outside some toy drone, I've never seen a drone again. That's not a good thing to do, but and also this. Since the other drones we talked about, you have the Mini, you have the issue with the Dji Flight Restrictions. This is a sophisticated drone that you can fly anywhere. So if you happen to be in the edge of an unrestricted zone, and you can't take off or whatever, but you're legal because you're on the other side of it. This no worries, you can fly the same where you want to.
So we should also add that while you can still buy this drone new, Parrot has announced that they're getting out of the consumer drone business. So if you want to buy one brand new, you should do it now. And of course, they're available as a refurb, but who knows how long that will be as well. We probably can't expect a lot of firmware upgrades from here on out, but it is such a phenomenal piece of equipment. Ron and I both just love that.
It's already full featured. You don't need any new features, and it doesn't have any bugs in that need to be corrected. And just make sure you pick up a extra battery or two when you get it, because batteries may be hard to get going forward.
Yeah. So the next category, Ron, is
we didn't do our pros and cons.
Okay.
My biggest pro is the camera, and my biggest con is the range.
So I just to be different, I'm going to say my biggest pro is the flight controls. It flies so smooth and so well. And I'm going to say, would say range, but I'm just to be different. I'm going to say I'm bummed out that it's discontinued, and I'm afraid that we will not see factory support. I don't know how much longer. So.
Okay, good. So that's our only drone in this price bucket, correct?
Yeah, that's the only one in this price bucket, and there may be others, but if there are, you and I don't have experience with them.
Right,
so.
right. Okay, so our next bucket is $700 to
$1,000, under $1,000.
So this is the biggest bucket so far.
Well, not quite, but close. So Ron,
I mean, as far as the gap in price, $300 gap.
Yes, totally agree with you. Totally agree.
Yeah.
So there's one drone in there that I know neither of us own, but I think we both have heard enough about it that we can speak intelligently. But the first one I have on the list, and Ron, I think you ought to start with it because I know you love yours, and that is the Xeno2 at $999.
And I forgot to get it out on the table here, so pretend I'm holding the Skydio. Marcus will get his Skydio out. Yeah, the Xeno2, a drone that came out. We first heard about it in the fall of last year, and they took pre-orders. Skydio's their own company. They took pre-orders. The drone arrived to most of us well into December. It kept getting pushed back, and most of us received ours in December. It's a different drone than any other drone we're talking about. It's a kind of an autonomous drone in many ways. It's sold for $999 without a controller because you can fly it with your phone well. But I have option of buying a beacon or a controller that's basically a repurposed Paranafi controller. Mark has shown you the cameras, the 3 cameras on the bottom and the top, 360 cameras for obstacle avoidance, detecting almost everything. And it's like this drone is probably more aware of its surroundings than any other drone on the market. It has powerful motors, can handle the wind. It's extremely fast and short bursts. Camera's very good on it. It reminds you more of the look you get out of a GoPro, a real oversaturated image. But I mean, the image really, it grabs you when you see the footage from it. You say, "Oh my, that looks." That looks good or whatever. It may not be for a hardcore photographer because it doesn't have the log profile and it's not a whole lot, it's not the kind of drone where you can get in and do a lot of big color correction because, again, it's not giving you that log profile. But for people that are into extreme sports and stuff, it tracks well, it avoids everything. But but it gets a negative of not being a drone for people that just want to catch a video. But the video is very good off of it. It flies well. It handles well. It does the tracking and the obstacle avoidance like no other drone. Downsides would be the range on it, and it does cost a lot to get it fully decked out. It still seems to be a little bit of work in progress as far as the software, but and it's one of the biggest cons is it's hard to get. But Marcus, what's your experience with it so far? Now I know your recent experience hasn't been good, but what's your overall experience?
Overall experience, I love it. And I get to thinking what Ron is referring to is I had a couple of issues the last flight last time I took it out. I had the app crash on me a couple times. Ron, they had upgraded the app, and I got to thinking about it. Had I rebooted my phone since they did that upgrade? So it could be that could have been very specific to my condition in my phone. I'm going to have to fly it again to find that out.
And now they are having software issues because we had Al Duran on the show last week, and he had a loss of connection, and it did not do the loss of connection return to home. It just hovered until it ran out of battery and went to the river. And Skydio acknowledged that there was a bug in the firmware. So they do have software issues right now. Maybe they're corrected, but anyhow, they're aware of it and they're taking care of him. But for right now,
they replaced his drone. They replaced his drone.
Right now, be careful of your firmware and your software right now.
Yeah. So as far as pros, you know, I mean, it is just so much. It is such a versatile drone. You know, you can fly it. People tend to think of it as a action camera that flies, and it is that, of course, because it's got a level of autonomy that no other drone has, and tracking ability that no other drone has, and obstacle avoidance that no other drone has. But you can also get really good cinematic shots with it. The negative that I'm going to say, Ron, of course, is that range that you were talking about. It's just a bummer. Skydio claims like a 3-kilometer range or 3.5 kilometers, something like that. Not even close. And I don't know why they say that.
Yeah, we have to call Skydio on the carpet for this one. I mean, they should have never misstated this range. I mean, everybody exaggerates their range, but they like doubled it. I mean, they exaggerated more than anybody else ever exaggerated the range.
Right. I lost connection at 500 meters the other day when I flew it, which is okay because that's a long ways out there. I mean, I'm not complaining. If that's all it flies, that's all it flies. I'm not even complaining about that. But why are they advertising that it flies further? I have had it. I will say this. I've had it like over Lucky Peak Reservoir and over the canyon. I've had it out a kilometer before. So it will fly further. But those were perfect conditions, and I don't think I quite got a kilometer out of it. So, you know.
Yeah.
But the other, if you were going to talk about a downside, Ron, the other one is, like you alluded to, yeah, it fit in this category because if you just buy it, it's $9.99, but that's no controller, that's no beacon, that's no extra batteries or anything. So
Charger.
Yeah, by the time you deck it all out with the things you're going to want, you're closer to $1,500, but it still technically fits in the category. The camera, to me, I just love it. I love the way it pops. I love the colors off of it. It's HDR. It'll shoot in 60 frames a second. That's probably it's most famous for its tracking and autonomy. The camera is the most underrated part of the drone. It's a phenomenal camera.
It has a lot of dynamic range. You could do sunsets with it or whatever. All the issues I told you that the Xeno2 has with overexposure, this has none of them. This can handle, you know, almost anything, you know, brightness. You cannot fly this thing at night because.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah, so if you're a night flyer. And here's the biggest thing I want to say about, we could go on forever, but here's the biggest thing. Don't buy the Skydio 2 thinking you're getting a Mavic 2 replacement or whatever. It's not the if you need a drone, if you know you need a Mavic 2 type drone, don't buy this as a replacement or instead of the Mavic 2. This is an additional drone to something like the Mavic 2. Or if you're an extreme sports guy, you know, you don't really want to fiddle around with anything. You just want the beacon to follow you. It's for you, but don't get it as a thinking you're getting a Mavic 2 alternative. It's not a Mavic 2 alternative. It actually fits in with no other drone we talked about here in many ways. But don't think it's not a camera drone. No, it is a camera drone.
It is, and you can get cinematic footage with it. Oh, we forgot to add, it will land right on top of this case.
So it has not precision landing exactly like the Mavic series do it, but it does have its own type of precision landing. So just to move along quickly, the pros with this thing for me would be the autonomous flying features, the tracking, and not that I'm saying it's any better tracking than my Mavic 2, but it's right there on the main screen. You don't have to activate tracking. You don't have to look for tracking. It's right there. If it sees a car, person goes by, a button comes right up, and you just press that button and you're tracking. So you're not going to miss the shot digging into the menu trying to find out where the tracking features are. So tracking, time is flying, and how good the GoPro style looking cameras, the negatives, the range, and it's a bit pricey.
So, Ron, I'm going to echo you exactly. Like I said, most people will say, you know, the biggest pro is the autonomy and the tracking, and that's probably true. But the camera is the most underrated part of it, and the cons, just as you said, are range with the controller. Oh, the other thing I'll add in the controller is there's a little bit of lag. If you're used to flight controls like you are with your Mavic, it's not as precise. It isn't, but it still works well enough. And you know, by the time you deck it all out, it's a fairly expensive product. But man, I know you do too, Ron. I just love my Skydio too. I have a lot of fun with it.
Do you agree that it's the type of drone you buy as additional drone and something else you already have?
The way I describe that, Ron, is, you know, it's just another arrow that I put in my quiver. It does not replace my Mavic Air 2 or my Mavic 2 Zoom, not even, but it is in addition to.
Kind of like if you own like I don't know, an SUV or a nice truck or whatever, and then you go buy some exotic sports car.
A Corvette, maybe.
Car. Yeah, Corvette. Yeah,
you had a Dodge Durango, but that you drove every day. But you wanted something to take to the drag strip, so you bought a Corvette.
Right. Yeah. So it's the Corvette. Okay. What else do we have in it? Anything else in this bucket that's of interest to our viewers?
So the next one that neither of us own, but I think we've talked to enough people and we've seen enough about it, we can speak to it a little bit. And because it fits so well in this price category, I included it, Ron, and that's the Autel Evo 1. We're talking about the original Evo, not the Evo 2 that just came out, and you can buy it commonly for $9.99. We have both seen it on sale, Ron. I've seen it as cheap as $7.99 before.
Mark, I've been tempted many times.
Yeah, and so it is. Was it the first 4K 60 drone, Ron? It had to be one of the first.
First 4K 60 foldable.
Okay, that's
right. I think the for Pro was already out.
That's
4K 60 1-inch sensor. So this is a 4K 60, but not on a 1-inch sensor.
Right. You know, I've heard pros and cons about the controller. What I will say is the controller itself also has an FPV screen on it, not just telemetry, but an actual FPV screen. So you could literally fly it without your mobile device connected if you wanted to. And I don't know what you lose or gain with the mobile device, but I know that you could fly it without it.
And it's like the only drone in this price category that has anything like that.
Right. Yeah.
So a lot of people have this drone. It's a popular drone. You know, we don't have, but Mark said we know a lot of people that do have it. You know, as far as I hear, you know, one of the pros could be its camera. You know, it's not only is it 4K 60, but people love the camera on this thing.
Straight off the card, they say that it's among the best video you'll ever see. Straight off the card,
without adding. And the other pro would be, of course, the controller. You know, with the built-in not only LCD but also the you know, the feed, the video feed from the drone itself. And the cons, you know, hear from a lot of people would be the range. I think the flight time's acceptable, and the fit and finish is pretty good from what I hear. I think it's a little on the big side compared to the say the Mavic.
I've heard that as well. I've never actually. Well, I've actually have seen one, but yeah. So it is a little bit bigger, but it's also a feature-rich drone. I think it has all the features.
Mm-hmm.
The only, you know, I'm just thinking about it, Ron. When you're in this price category, the only downside I can think of is what I've heard people talk about, the range issue, and I've heard multiple people say that. So there, although they claim it's another one where they claim a long range, but a lot of people aren't getting even close to that. Otherwise, I'm going to say it's a solid choice for what I know about it, Ron.
Yeah, I mean, basically, I think it's a tweener between the Mavic 1 and Mavic 2. It's kind of like a, it has things the Mavic 1 doesn't have, but then the Mavic 2 has some other things. But again, we're just speaking. We don't, I've never flown it. I only know people have flown. So I think we're ready to move on from this one, right? Since we don't really have hands on.
I wanted to add one more thing about it, though, that I just thought of. It does have a level of obstacle avoidance. I don't know if it's just forward. I can't remember, but it does have some obstacle avoidance on it. But the next one,
the first drone we've talked about so far with, second drone. The Skydio. Nobody tops the Skydio in obstacle avoidance.
Yeah.
We mentioned like the heavyweight champ in the Skydio.
Yeah, an obstacle avoidance.
But yeah, so that's a good point. So do we have any other drones in this category that people may know?
Well, so the next on my list is the Mavic Air 2. But Ron, before we talk about that, I want to give just a quick comment on what I consider an also-ran, because it's just a little bit outside of the price range here. And that's the Mavic 2 Zoom. You can get it as a refurb for $1,079. And I realize that stretches that $1,000 category a little bit, but it is something that bears mentioning because it actually has optical zoom on it, and that Mavic 2 platform is so well known and so well renowned. And I'm just going to leave it at that because it does kind of fall outside of the category, and it's just going to get that kind of a byline.
Yeah, I know some people are going to say, well, that's a refurb, but as Brian Singleton just showed recently with his Inspired One, and many people have, a lot of times you get a refurb from DJI and it looks like it's brand new. So I mean, this refurb may not have a scratch on it you're getting. So you don't think this is like getting a refurb from some third party seller. This is these usually look, as Brian would say, very cherry when they come in these DJI refurbs. But that's a good point. It may be a good reach to spend a couple extra dollars and get a more of a premium drone. But what else do we have in this price bucket?
Well, the next one is a drone that Ron and I, you and I have both spent a lot of time on it, and
I may have it handy.
You've got it handy. We both of us, I think, like this drone way more than we thought we would when we purchased it. And that is the Mavic Air 2 for $799. Man, I don't even know where to begin, Ron. Do you want me to go first, or do you want to start?
You go on the cons because I don't have any.
Yeah, so there's only one con I can think of, and it's not even really a con. It's just it does not have 360-degree obstacle avoidance, and the only time that comes into play, it has phenomenal tracking. It has I can't remember what DJI calls their tracking, but it's the 3.0 version of their Active Track 3.0.
Very easy to get at, not hard to access.
Yeah, and it's got that, and the reason that 360 obstacle avoidance is an issue is because it tracks so well, you don't want to forget about it and run it sideways into an obstacle that the drone doesn't see. That's the only downside I can talk about, Ron.
Yeah, and that's like saying the only downside to my car is it doesn't
fly.
Yeah, it doesn't fly or whatever.
Yeah.
But that is a con. But of course, the only drone in this category that we talked about that would have that would be the Skydio too.
No, the Mavic 2 Zoom has phenomenal 300.
Yeah, but I mean, that was a reach though. That's not actually.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yep. Correct.
Yeah. That's a drone. That's a drone that at full price that would have been. Not double this, but a good deal more than this.
I think full price on that Mavic 2 Zoom as a new one is like $1,379 or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, remember, well, we're given, of course, what do you call it? The trade war prices. I think on release date, the Mavic 2 Pro was $14.99, and the Zoom, I believe, was like $12.9 or $12.49. It was like $250 less, right?
Yeah, I think I paid, because I bought my Mavic 2 Zoom on release day, and I think I paid $11.50 for it. I believe, Ron.
And the price, nothing to do with the trade war then, but the price did change shortly after they were released, and then they stabilized at $14.99 and $12.49, and then they changed again with the tariffs.
Right.
They initially came out at a different price point than they were just a month or two later when they settled it. But anyhow, point being that the Mavic 2 Zoom or Pro is it's like the buying the high end version. But so let's go quickly on this because everybody knows this. 4K 60, 1.5 inch sensor,
half inch sensor.
Yeah, not a 1 inch sensor, but halfway there, bigger than big. This is the biggest sensor I think we've talked about so far. Yeah, it's even bigger than the Zoom if you want to throw the Zoom in the equation.
Yeah,
so
I think it is.
Biggest sensor we've got so far. Is that 4K 60 and what's
HDR
1080p has got a real it's got 240
240 frames a second. Yeah.
HDR video. So again, I don't know if the Autel one does HDR, but if it doesn't, it's the first. Well, I shouldn't say that. The Skydio 2 also does. We forgot. It does 4K 60 and HDR at the same time, where this won't do both of them at the same time. They only do one at a time.
Right.
But the HDR video in this is incredible. The pictures are incredible in this. They have a thing called Smart Photo, which analyzes it, makes all the corrections for you in camera. Delivers a great photo. But you can take bracketed photos with this that you can assemble yourself, DNG photos in Lightroom or your editor of choice later on to get the highest level. It does a 48 megapixel photo if you need something with detail. Does great pano photos. The camera in this thing is amazing for the price point, more than most people need. Only downside is it does have a one sensor, is not effective in low light as the Mavic 2 Pro. But I know every other way, it's almost all the camera anybody needs. I'm skipping real fast. Has great flight time. Does advertise over 30 minutes. I see the high 20s on it. Has great range. OcuSync 2.0. This thing, it may go as far as your Mavic 2 Pro does.
Probably further. I think I've never.
Probably further. I know we go back and forth on this. Depending who you talk to, but the range is no issue. Flight time is among the best. It's about maybe half the size of the not half the size of the Mavic 2, but considerably smaller. Lighter, more pocketable. Again, I'm like a kid in the candy shop here. It does almost everything well. It has a good autonomous modes in it to do many flight things. It just recently got added zoom to it, and the zoom is not optical zoom like the Mavic 2 zoom, but I mean you can at least zoom in once, and I don't see any deterioration or whatever. And probably because of that, the ability to do the 48 megapixel photo thing, it can do a lot of lossless digital zooming. So I've acted like a big fanboy here, so I'm going to pass it over to Marcus.
Well, Ron, we're both fanboys of this drone, and I'll take it even a step further. If somebody twisted my arm tomorrow and said, Marcus, you can only own one drone, I wouldn't even have to think about it. I'd say that the Mavic Air 2, as much as I love my Skydio, as much as I love my Femi, as much as I love my original Hubsan Xeno, all these other drones, it's just no contest. This Mavic, and well, even the Mavic 2 Zoom, the Mavic Air 2 is the most versatile, capable drone that I own by far. And when you put the price point into the equation, it is the best value ever.
Name that price for the good folks out there, Mark.
$799 for the single battery version, $999 for the Flymar combo that comes with 3 batteries and gosh, I'm trying to remember what. Oh, you get a bag and a charge hub and a number of other things with that Fly More combo that was worth it to me, because I need those extra batteries because I love flying this one so much. I want to put it up more often. Yeah, it is the class of the field right now, in my humble opinion, and I don't fly it enough.
Right, and the value. Our friend Billy Kyle told me one time on a live show I was on, we were talking about the Mini versus the Mavic Air 2, and he said, "Well, the Mavic Air 2 is twice the price of the Dji Mavic Mini, but it's 3 times the drone in performance,
at least."
And he made an understatement there,
yeah, and so that's what we've talked about this before, Ron. What I tell people, if you're going to buy, even if you're a beginner, even if you've never owned a drone before, if you have the money, if you've got the $800, buy the Mavic Air 2. You won't regret it. It's very easy to fly, very user friendly. You're going to be able to come in never having ever flown a drone before, and you'll be able to put this thing up in the air and not have any problems with it. The Fly app is very simple to use, and it's a drone that you will grow into as well. So I know we sound like DJI fanboys, but it's because the drone is that good.
Now, we skipped over 2 now. We talked about other drones having hovering issues, stability issues. This has no such thing as any, hovering or stability issues or being blown away in the wind. None of that stuff applies to the Mavic Air 2, right, Marcus?
Right. It is not. You cannot say it's as fast as the Mavic 2 or as the Femi or the Xeno2, but it's nearly as fast. It will do all of 40 miles an hour and probably a little bit more. Those other ones will probably get close to 43, 44. So it's very incremental.
And cuts through a stiff wind like butter, or
without any issues. I totally agree. Yeah. It's just a phenomenal piece of technology, and it's hard to believe that they can build it for the price.
Right, has all the sensors on the bottom you need. Again, it like you said, for a beginner, if a beginner puts that up, they can just hover it and they can just let it sit there for the whole entire battery. It's not going to go away from them.
Yeah, exactly.
Very precise, Marcus. A precision landing.
Precision landing works really well on it. I mean, I've had it miss before, but not very often. What I've found applies to all DJI drones and precision landing. If you are messing around in the intelligent flight modes, I don't know what that does, but it seems to make the precision landing not work as well when you land it. If you take the drone up flight, never having put it in an intelligent flight mode, it'll nail that landing every time. Now, that's anecdotal. That's just something that I've noticed flying the drone. So don't take that as gospel, but it's just something that I've noticed. So Ron, you asked me what my con was, and I came up with one. Do you have any cons for this drone?
As usual stuff. I think I had a con when I was rambling on, but I've already
lost it.
Already lost the con. And then one time we were doing a show with Bill. That's Bill, the drone reviewer, and he wanted me to give my cons, and I said, well, there are none or whatever. I don't have any.
Yeah.
So
in fact, when that show, as I recall, we were
make the point that the con was, and you guys had cons, but they were all app related. They weren't actually
right. It was with that battery thing at the top of the at the top of the Fly app, and they fixed that. So no more issues there. It was white colored and you couldn't see it. Well, now it's green and you can see it. So it's awesome. So are we going to go down our list of favorites in these categories, Ron?
Yeah. I guess we had one. We didn't. I guess we don't have to do a pro and con on this because we already kind of covered it or whatever. Pros, everything.
Cons, very little. Maybe the 360 obstacle. That's the only thing I can think of that maybe I wish it had, but it doesn't.
Right. Okay. We'll go, where do you want to start, at the low end? And
the sub 200 I'm going to say if you insist on starting at that level, I'm going to say the MJX Bug 7. No, it's not a stabilized camera, but it will give you a good GPS drone experience.
And I haven't flown anything in that category. Well, I'll say the Telos. That's the only drone I flew in the 200 category here.
Good choice. I suspect we'll be in agreement on sub 300 and, of course, the Hubsan Xeno. So much goodness in that drone.
Right. It's no use even really mentioning anything else.
Yeah, yeah. Sub 500, I am, just to be obtuse, I am going to say the Femi X8 Se, because of its ability to fly in the wind. I have a feeling I know what your choice is going to be.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough choice because they're very different drones in many ways. The Femi and the Hubsan, they're kind of wannabe Mavic 2 or Mavic, maybe Mavic 1, Mavic 2 type drones. But I'm going to take the Mavic Mini in this category. It's just it lacks the motor strengths and all some of the bells and whistles, but it's refined. Everything on a Mini works like it should. The other two drones, not even close.
Can I tell you a secret, Ron?
Yeah.
The Mini is really my choice too, but sub 700, we're going to have to agree on that one.
Oh yeah, we only have one. Yeah, the Anafi. And you know what? If you threw the Anafi in the other price bucket, say you got it for $400 a refurb, you throw in that bucket. I mean, again, these drones are so different. It's hard to. It's like comparing apple and oranges. If you're mostly interested in photography, if it win the $300 to $500 price bucket, if you're only interested in photography, if you're interested with, I don't know, flying long ranges away from you, it's not in there, but it could win that category if photography was just your thing, because just like the Mini, it's a very refined drone. But even getting against the Mini, it lacks the Mini's range and the Mini's battery life. So I mean, these drones, that category more than any other category depends on what you're thing you're looking for the most in. Yeah, you have to tell me what you're looking for the most. Like the previous price bucket with the Xeno, you have to tell me what you're looking for, because the Xeno 2 is better than the other competitors in everything.
Yeah.
But this price bucket is the most controversial price bucket. All depends on what your priorities are.
Yeah. Now the next price bucket, Ron, I'm going to say is the one that no matter which one of these you bought, you'd have a great drone and would be happy with it.
Right.
You can't say that about some of the other price buckets, but this one, I mean, obviously we're going to have the same answer for sure, because people can tell how we gushed about it, and that's the Mavic Air 2, and no point in rehashing that. I'm sure you're in agreement there.
I don't want to knock the Autel, but I don't know if the Autel does it do anything better than the Mavic and then the Air 2. I mean, range, flight time, camera. I guess camera is always argumentative, but I don't know if it does anything better, and it comes in much cheaper.
Yeah. I agree. So I
mean, it's so apples and oranges and whatever. Again, if you're a biker, extreme sports person, all you want is a tracking drone, then that's the obvious answer.
Is the Skydio, no question. But you could buy any one of these, and you would likely be very happy with it. Although the Mavic Air 2 it's the best value in drones that I have ever seen, and I would recommend it to anybody. Even if you've never owned a drone before, if you've got the money, that's a good place to start. Hey, I've got a couple of honorable mentions that I want to throw out there that are not available as new, and we haven't talked about them yet, Ron. If you can find used the original Mavic Pro or the Pro Platinum, you can find them used that I looked at for $500 or $600. Fantastic drones. And then the other one is the original Mavic Air, is also a great full-featured drone, albeit with less range and less battery life. And you can find those used for $400 to $500. So those are just, we already talked about the Bebop too, but those, I just wanted to mention those.
Oh, we talked about Spark also, which you could mention right in there.
We did. Just so that people know that there are options out there.
Yeah,
so,
right.
So, man, great discussion, Ron. I
hope this helps people out there. You know, if they're in a conundrum about what drone to get or how much to spend, or I hope this helps in some way or another. I hope we didn't miss your favorite drone because we've never had or just not aware of it. But like I said, we try not to focus on drones that flew well but had unstabilized video. So if we left that out, that was kind of on purpose. But if we missed a good stabilized drone, with camera drone, let us know.
I'm sure there's going to be some people that say that, boy, my Phantom 3 Pro was the best drone I've ever owned, and that's, we're not arguing with that at all.
And we talked about drones that discontinue, and I think the only Phantom that's still kind of in production is the Phantom 4 Pro V2.0, and that probably maybe won't be around for much longer. We did not mention that. It's not in this price bucket. It sells for like $1,500 or whatever. But all the Phantoms are discontinued. The Phantoms were all great drones. Can't say enough about the Phantoms were the first great drones. All these drones are basically, they're the grandchildren of the great Phantom series. So long live the Phantom series. If you have a Phantom out there and still flying good, you don't care about folding or travel, hey, stick with the Phantom.
Yep, and I know there's some people that own some of those unique drones that swear by them. I mean, so there are a lot of good drones out there, but these are the ones that we have experience, and we also want to reiterate everything that we were talking about here. We're focusing on sub $1,000 drones.
Yeah, right. If you, Mavic 2 Pro is a great drone. The new Evo 2s look good. I mean, there's a lot of great drones at the higher end of the market.
Right.
Of course, we could have threw Brian Singleton's Inspire 1 in there since it was I think he only paid $20 more in the Mavic 2 Zoom you just mentioned. He got it for $10.99.
That thing's a monster.
It's no travel drone.
It's not a travel drone. Yeah.
So, folks, we've gone over the 2-hour mark here. So I hope we didn't put any of you to sleep or whatever on Labor Day after you enjoyed all your barbecues and picnics and all your holiday, as much holiday partying as you could do in these rough Corona times. Hopefully next year the virus will be long behind us, and we won't be talking about it except as a distant bad memory. But I hope everybody had a safe holiday out there. Safe and happy holiday, and we'll be back next week with another live broadcast. We don't know who the guest is yet, but could be a big name, or it could just be Marcus I. You never know. We've kind of haven't had a lot of hot topics to talk about lately, but I mean, Marcus I'll probably get in depth a little bit on the OM4 gimbal next week, so we'll have a couple weeks, hands-on time with it by then, and be able to go into that more. Maybe by then the Rowan a gimbal for the big cameras will be out, and we won't really talk about much that because we don't have that device and probably won't have that device, but we'll mention it in passing, the specs and the price or whatever. And we're on the lookout for the Spark controller update to make it compatible with the Mavic Air 2, which our good friend Lauren says that'll come after the Rowans are released. So hopefully that's true. And then, of course, we'll all be looking forward to the Mavic 3 series, but that could be as far back as the holidays or next year.
Right.
That's kind of just a roadmap of, what's coming up in the fall and the summer here. Marcus, do you have any closing, sentiments for the good folk out there who holiday?
Yep, same as you. I hope everybody had a great Labor Day holiday and you were safe in this time of coronavirus. It's difficult on all of us. So as I said before, this is the time that we need to be particularly tolerant of everybody. Be kind to your neighbor. Take care of your neighbors. And I hope you enjoyed this conversation before, because Ron and I, put a lot of thought into it, and we're passionate about this, and we really enjoy this hobby. And I hope that that it helps people kind of decide where they fit in all those categories of drones that we talked about. Thank you, everybody, and thank you, Ron.
Yeah, and let us know in the comments if you enjoy this type of show. If you do, maybe we'll do some more like it. If this one's just too long-winded, we'll we will discontinue future. But do let us know if you got anything out of this show, if you ever want to see anything like this again. So with that note, we will see you on the next one.